I'm Rhiannon Tise and I'm a writer. I've written 7 plays for Touring. So the first play I wrote was called Playing God, and it was about kidney transplants, and it had a reading at the National Theatre, and that was part of a big Touring project in 2000, and I had a science advisor all along the sort of writing process, and he was great and really, really helpful. And it's the first time I'd ever written a science play. In fact, I was terrible at science at school. I got an E for my GCSE chemistry exam. And so when I was approached to sort of be involved in this theatre of the debate project, I was like, my goodness, I'm not a science person. But I loved it because it was something that I'd never sort of done before, so it was a brilliant, brilliant process. And then from that, I worked in schools for Touring, sort of helping the students write their own plays, science plays. And then I wrote a play called Wasted, which was about binge drinking. Oh, Photograph 51. I wrote Photograph 51, which was about Rosalind Franklin, and Nigel and I were sort of really interested in sort of doing something about her, and we went and met her sister, which was fascinating. And then I wrote Headstone, and that was on at the Arcola Theatre, and that was an idea that I took to Nigel, and it was about asylum seekers sort of and the conflicts between living side by side with sort of people who live here, and asylum seekers sort of being put into their estates, and what happened when those two sort of groups mixed. And that I really enjoyed writing that one. It was a great cast, and it was on at the Arcola, and it was a great place to do it because it was like a stone's throw away from the estate, from where I lived, and the estate that I had sort of set it on. And then after that I wrote The Silencer, which was about sort of climate change and risk. If I had to pick one play from the ones that I've written for Touring, the one I enjoyed the most was, well, it's really hard. They're all so different. I really like them all, but probably Headstone, because it wasn't a science play, but it was still dealing with young people's issues, dilemmas, lives. You know, there was 3 characters that were teenagers, and there was an older man in it, and that was great. I really, really liked working with Nigel on that, and seeing it on at the Arcola was great. And I also liked doing some of the smaller projects like Wasted and Where's Your Head At, because they were just very kind of just get up and go. We just did it really quickly, and it was a very quick turnaround, and they got the cast together, and that was also a brilliant, vibrant sort of thing to do, and it didn't take ages. It was just get up and go and do it, which I like too. So that's 2. I really liked writing the science plays that I did for Touring, and the projects I was involved in schools. I'd never thought about writing a sort of specifically science play until I had come across Touring, and yeah, it was great. It sort of opened my mind up, and to sort of that area that I was quite scared of before, because I was sort of not great at it at school, or maybe didn't pick the right science for me. And I sort of thought, well, I'm obviously too stupid to understand science, but actually I've discovered since writing my first play for Touring, Playing God, that actually science and art are quite similar, and in many ways they're quite similar. Scientists are sort of searching for things, and artists are doing that as well. I'd say that the the difference between working for Wide Touring and other companies that I've worked for probably is a sort of process of selection is quite different. Although maybe not, because actually when you're sort of pitching your ideas for other companies, you don't necessarily get invited along to a workshop day, but you are up against lots of other writers. So in that sense, it's not that different. But I think the workshop day is, if you're into it and if you can just go with it and not think this is a bit odd, then it's a brilliant opportunity for writers, because you're there talking to a load of experts about the area that you're going to pitch an idea for. So it's a brilliant opportunity, and it's a fantastic thing to be able to do, and it's fascinating as well, sort of hear these people and the debates that can come out of having all these different people in a room together is great, really good. So I think that's a key difference. I'd say that as a playwright, my experience working with Wide Touring, I've definitely become more interested in sort of science issues. I heard something on the radio the other day that I took to Nigel and said, "Oh, this sort of sounds a bit like a Wide Touring play." So it was so it's still my ears and eyes are open to sort of possible science things that might interest him. And I think that the process, probably that sort of fact that there's quite a lot of people involved in reading your work, and there's lots of different comments, and also from lots of different fields, so it's not just a group of creatives, it's also people from different walks of life and different jobs that all want to comment on the play that you're writing on, which, like I said, can be really useful. It's probably made me more sort of open to that sort of way of working. I think Wide Touring is important because the sort of I feel that they give writers the opportunity to write great plays, but also they create sort of non-patronising drama for young people, and don't sort of hold back on talent. I mean, lots of plays that and companies that I've seen in the past or whatever have, because you take things into schools, can have a sort of dusty edge around it, but Wide Touring's not like that at all. They're sort of right up there with sort of really innovative techniques in staging and all the sort of the devices, the stuff with the keypads that I don't quite understand, but all the kids do, and that's brilliant if you're going to go and see a play in your school hall about science or whatever, or some issue. You think, oh God, that sounds dreadful, but actually 9 times, it's brilliant. So I think that's why they're important, because they create, or Wide Touring creates brilliant drama.